So you just completed your self-assessment for your performance review. You've outlined your wins, your impact, your contributions, and you feel pretty good about it. But then you sit down with your manager and something is not lining up. Their feedback is positive, but it's lighter than what you expected. Yeah, and it's actually kind of vague and general. And then you see your peer feedback and it doesn't fully reflect what you know you've been doing. And you're left there scratching your head because how can my experience of my work and everyone else's perception be this different, especially when day to day things feel very encouraging? You're not getting any negative feedback and you're not being told that you're off track. But somehow, when it really matters, the story does not match. That disconnect is what I want to talk about today. So stick with me. Welcome to Crossroads and Catalyst. I'm your host, Shanita B. This is where we explore how a thoughtful, wise, and strategic perspective at life's crossroads can become the catalyst for meaningful change in your leadership and the direction of your life. So we've been talking about confidence being internal work for the last several weeks, but today I really want us to address some of the external factors that chip away at our confidence. And primarily, I'm talking about the workplace dynamics. So by the end of this episode, you're going to understand why there can be a misalignment between how you experience your work and how it's reflected back to you. And more importantly, how to use influence, visibility, and communication to start shifting things in your favor. And one of the things that you have to acknowledge is the challenge with seeing the real issue, because sometimes we just immediately blame ourselves. And then you have to also determine the next steps, which is why self reflection is so important. It is extremely helpful to have someone ask you questions, which is why I'm offering my What's Next Crossroads Reflection Guide. And really, what this is going to do is give you some thoughtful questions to ask yourself so that you can get clear on your crossroads and your choices and your next steps, because that's what you're trying to get through. So, and you can also join me at my confidence webinar, which is where we're going to focus on what you can do when feedback and recognition do not fully match your effort. So the links for those are in the show notes. The crossroads here, what we're talking about today, is really what I'm calling a confidence disconnect. And this is the misalignment between your experience of your contribution at work and the way that it's perceived, understood, or even reflected back to you by other people. So you could be performing extraordinarily well, and you can also be receiving some positive feedback, but you recognize that there's something off because there may be something that comes up that would require some additional feedback, and maybe it's not a face-to-face thing, maybe it's something in writing. And recognizing that there's something off, it really does kind of erode and undermine your confidence. And some of this can simply be that your perception is off, but at other times it could just be that it's your work environment, and that's what's contributing to your concern. And I can share the situation because I've had plenty of them. I took a 360 once, and the challenge with the 360 was I was looking at my experience in this role and my overall experience and rating myself, which is what you do. My direct report participated, my boss participated, and several of my colleagues. What was really unexpected was the feedback that I received from my manager, because my direct report and we were almost completely aligned. It was almost uncanny how close our scores matched one another. So I knew that I was doing something well there. But what took me a step back was recognizing that my boss did not see my performance the same way that I saw my performance. And that was really, it really was cause for concern for me because there had not been any conversations leading up to that. There hadn't even been coaching or any signals that we saw my work differently. And so I just remember thinking, well, how did we get to this place where our scores would be so vastly different from one another? And so that was a struggle for me because immediately I started to question myself and ask myself, well, what did I do or what didn't I do? Or what should I have said? What should I have done? I just had these things going through my head, and I could not think of not one particular thing that really would have caused this person to assess my performance in that way. And so what I had to do was really get clear on what I thought the issues might be. Okay. So let's get clear about this, because these workplace dynamics, this is what they do is they come in and they cause us to think and second guess our work. So number one, you have some feedback compression. So you might be doing some really challenging, complex work, but all you're hearing is, "Oh, you're doing well. It's you're doing great. Just keep doing what you're doing. It's looking good." And that doesn't really tell you anything, because if that feedback is vague, your confidence calibration gets a little vague too, because you think that, you've done this fantastic job on what was really something that was pretty challenging, and all you got was great job. Well, I mean, people say great job to the dog, right? So you want more than that. You want to hear some specifics. And so this feedback compression really challenges us to have to work past that. And sometimes we're going to have to ask more specific questions as well. And not every person who has the title of leader really has those qualities that helps them to express to their direct reports information that is going to help them to grow and develop. So then what are some other things that really create this misalignment and this gap? Well, it's, this visibility asymmetry. Your work is real, but it's not always seen in context. Okay? So other people can summarize the outcomes that you built, and they don't really know what it took to get that work done. So it just goes back to that complex work that I referenced in that first point. They don't know what it took. So they don't really understand what you had to go through in order to get that. Okay. So then another contributor to this is there's a timing gap. Sometimes you're not even included in the things that are necessary and pertinent for you to carry out your job. You're brought in after decisions are made. You're not helping to shape some of the conversations. And so, if you're not a part of shaping the conversations, then you're often not in the story. And I've had that happen as well, especially when you show up, whether it's a new role or you've been in a role for quite some time, but maybe there's turnover and new people step in, and sometimes that list of people who would typically be included in a conversation or a meeting, somehow they get dropped off. And so that causes some issues, right? And so then another thing would be attribution distortion. And so what is that? It's the work that you're doing becomes the expected level of work, when really something has been attributed to you or has been put under your scope that typically would not be yours. So your work becomes expected, but everyone else's contributions become notable. Oh, this is noteworthy. And so over time, that doesn't just affect your recognition. It affects how you interpret your own value. And you shouldn't be taking it personally, but sometimes it's hard not to take it personally. And so the point that I'm trying to make is the workplace, there are office politics that are taking place. There are stressors and frustrations that cause people to do or not do certain things that they might not otherwise do under certain contexts, situations. And so you have to develop an awareness about what is going on in your particular situation. Okay, so now that you recognize these, now you have some choices to make. And so the question that you have to ask yourself is, well, what do I do about it? And what you want to do about it is you want to shift away from thinking that it's you and everything that you're doing, but you have an opportunity to influence some of these perceptions and how you're seen in the workplace. Okay, because you can't control how every system reflects your work, but what you can do is you can influence how your work enters that system. And some of these systems in which you're working are beyond complex. It is very challenging to maybe get the visibility or have the transparency that you think is necessary in order to help someone to understand what it is that you're contributing and how you're helping to move things along and to progress them. So some of the things that you can do is you can own the narrative, right? So instead of instead of saying I'm working on, you can start to change the language and even say, well, I led A, B, and C, which resulted in one, two, three. Because the point is that if you don't narrate your impact, the system will simplify it. And I've had this happen. Okay. And I have been told uh, by at least one manager, make sure that you put a voice to the work that you're doing. You have to highlight your work. Sometimes you have to toot your own horn. And there's a way that you can do that that does not cause you to come off as arrogant and cocky and prideful. You're just calling attention to the work that you're doing. And sometimes that is what is absolutely necessary. Okay. So own the narrative because it is yours. You get to write the story. And so that's how I want you to see that. And so another lever that you can pull is that upstream visibility. Okay. This is not just you intermingling with the downstream reporting. This is where you can communicate after those outcomes, right? So you want to share your thinking earlier. When you have conversations with your leader, you want to tell them that this is what you're working on, or these are the ideas that you have. And you also want to bring some options and recommendations. You want to help shift the perception from an executor, right, to a contributor in that context. And it doesn't mean that you're not a leader, but even leaders have to contribute in a way that helps to keep things moving. And having that audience, and when you have that audience, sharing with them that these are the things that you are moving through the process that you are building out, that is important. So remember that. And then another lever that you can pull is just, having some strategic inclusion requests. This is going to cause some of you to have to get out of your comfort zone, but you're going to have to ask or to be included in some things. So stop waiting for people to invite you to meetings. Just simply say, hey, can I be included on that meeting? Can you send me the meeting request for that? Or I'd like to be a part of this conversation before the decisions are finalized. You will have to do these things in order to avail yourself to things that maybe you've been left out of. And it may not have been through your issue or your boss's issue. It may just be because of turnover, a lot of changes. Of course, organizations are in a constant state of change. So a lot of things can happen that would contribute to you not being privy to information that you either need or want. Okay. So stop asking for permission and start shaping the access, and frame your questions in such a way that makes them want you to be involved. Okay. Because you're there not only to help yourself, but to help them and to support them. And so that's how I want you to consider this and to think about moving forward with this. All right. So over the next week, I want you to take one step. Okay. So choose one moment where you would normally stay in execution mode and then shift. I want you to shift. So you're not just going in and doing things, you're going in and getting access to the meetings that you need or to the people who you need to talk to. One thing, whether that's asking to be included in a conversation and to do so earlier in the process rather than later, or maybe you're clarifying your role in some particular outcomes. You have to choose what those things are. And I can give you an example because in one of my positions, I was having some difficulty getting invitations to meetings. I didn't even know what meetings I needed to be involved in. I just knew that I needed to be involved in some because this role was new and I was trying to get acclimated to the process. So finally, I just had to start taking actions into my own hands. And so I would send an email to the executive and the executive's assistant. Please include me on this meeting. Please submit to me the meeting request for X, Y, and Z. And so eventually this executive started to consider, oh, yes, I needed to invite Shanita to be a part of this conversation, or Shanita needs to know about this, that, and the other. It's not going to be easy because it took months. Okay. So I don't want to make this sound as though you're going to go in and everybody's just going to fall in line and start giving you access to everything that you think that you need. It might not be that simple or that easy, but you have to start somewhere. And so you're going to have to take the initiative to get that done. Okay. You are not waiting to be seen. You are practicing how to make your work visible in real time. And these are the steps that you're going to have to take. All right. So I want to leave you with two things. First, if you're in a moment of your own crossroads right now where you're trying to make sense of your work or your next step, I want to hear about it. Okay. So you can leave me a voicemail or contact me through my website, crossroadsandcatalyst.com. I listen to every one of them and I read every message. And sometimes I will bring those stories into future episodes because I know that there are a lot of people who are navigating similar moments. Okay. So make sure that you check that out. And then second, if you want to support working through what we talked about today, then remember to check out the link in the notes about the confidence reflection guide. Okay, that is really a good place for you to start. It will help you map out what is happening so you're not trying to interpret everything all at once. It'll just give you the opportunity to think through it slowly and methodically. And if you're ready to go beyond that, okay, then join me for my confidence webinar where we're going to walk through how to rebuild clarity and confidence, especially in situations like this, okay, where things don't seem to be lining up, because your confidence is important. It's not absolutely required to get started on something, but we don't want it to be eroded and chipped away. Okay? So, check those things out. And I appreciate that you're listening. So until next time, be thoughtful, be wise, be strategic, and remember, crossroads reveal who you are. Catalysts shape who you become. Every decision matters. So make it count. I'll talk to you next week.